Good morning, everybody. This is a live extreme weather briefing, recapping the storm system that is ejecting off to the northeast right now. It is over northeastern Pennsylvania as a lower 980s millibar low, and there are some lake-enhanced bands that continue to hammer northeastern Ohio. The leading snowfall total up there of 22.5 inches happened in the northeastern portion of Ohio, so that western trend continued even further, bringing that heaviest snow into northeastern Ohio, even a little bit west of the Erie, Pennsylvania area. And here are these snowfall totals. This is from the National Weather Service showing you the entire snowfall data all the way up. The yellows and the blues are the lowest, and then up to the yellows and the reds show you those highest totals. And look at that in the mountains of northwestern North Carolina. Also some totals well in excess of a foot. Gatlinburg had 11.5 inches, definitely aided by that upper level low and a bit of some orographic enhancement on the back end with that banding beneath that upper level low and those moist westerly flow up the western edge of the Smoky Mountains. Winter storm warnings continue along the spine and the western slopes of the southern Appalachians. That includes the Smoky Mountains. And I almost blasted all the way up to the Smoky Mountains to cover some of that snow. But I figured I would do a live weather briefing here instead because there is some snowstorm potential next weekend. Looks like another threat across the southern and the eastern U.S. Some of the models that I looked at last night were a little bit alarming. That GFS model was showing 12 to 18 inches down here across upstate South Carolina and up through central Virginia, hammering the New York City area and southern New England, but it's still way too early to be breaking down the exact track of next weekend's system, but we're still going to attempt to do it here, and I'm going to share with you the latest in the forecast model data. But we still have to get through the current storm system. You can see the winter storm warnings that are in pink. That includes the spine of the southern Appalachians because of that moist northwesterly flow, picks up that moisture over the warm Great Lakes waters upstream, and then it hits the first obstacle, the first area of topography there in the southern Appalachians, and then squeezes out that moisture on the western slopes of the Appalachians. Definitely winter storm warnings continue there. And there is a mesoscale discussion basically across northern New York and across northern New England, where heavy snow is expected to continue over the next several hours. Here is that band in northeastern Ohio, and this is the area that had the greatest snowfall totals, approaching 2 feet up there from this storm system. This took a slightly inland track, so it brought that swath of snow over the Appalachian Mountains, and then ended up this. Oop, there, just lost our blue light. This area across northeastern Ohio and into Ontario didn't have the opportunity to get dry slotted, where areas off to the east certainly did. And you can see the lake enhanced band hammering those areas of northeastern Colorado. Off to the east, you can see some of that unsettled flow, banding, definitely picking up moisture off the lakes, off of the Great Lakes here, Lake Ontario, as well as Lake Huron upstream. Further to the northeast, looking at some of those Canadian radar sites. Look at Ottawa just getting blasted up there. I saw Storm Chaser Tom Smetana was posting some photos of some big snow in the Ottawa area there. Look at this pivot off to the northwest. Big lead band there, rocketing northwest across southern Quebec. And then down toward Montreal, a little bit of a clear slot, dry slot wrapping all the way around. We experienced that down here in upstate South Carolina, southerly flow there. Most of the heaviest snowfall across the northeast was limited to the higher terrain. That includes the Berkshires, the mountains of Vermont and New Hampshire, pivoting off to the northeast. So now the threat extends to next weekend, where it looks like there is going to be a pretty substantial potential for a winter storm. And as I mentioned, we do have a very favorable pattern for that eastern U.S. Storm systems. You basically have clippers that are riding the north side of that ridge, dropping southeast from Alberta, from Canada. There's another disturbance dropping southeast from the Canadian prairies. And then it deepens across the southern U.S. before phasing with a southern system. And then there's that system that lifts off to the northeast, bringing that threat of snow once again across the southeast. Another storm system in the southern stream phasing with that clipper and then lifting off to the northeast. So this is a very favorable pattern. It's a positive P&A pattern, which means that you have a ridge across the western U.S. and then off to the eastern U.S. you have a trough, you have cold air that's in place, you have a blocking high off to the northeast. We also have a negative NAO, or a North Atlantic oscillation, that is in place, and that involves a high pressure area over Greenland. Basically, you have a log jam across the North Pacific in the jet stream, and you get a buckled jet stream. And in this case, coupled with that positive PNA, when you have a ridge across the western US and a trough across the east with these disturbances riding southward out of Canada, picking up a southern stream system, phasing with it, and then ejecting across the east coast. Looks like the early to middle portion of that next week, there could also be a storm system. And that marks the end of February as we're going way out through the different forecast models. So now let's look at next weekend. We do have that new storm system that we've been discussing. Unfortunately, it's right at the same time as ChaserCon, the Storm Chaser Summit. So unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to have to go virtual for my presentation on the Storm Chaser Summit so that I can cover this southern U.S. storm system. So here is the positive PNA. You've got a system that's dropping out of Alberta. This is on Friday. And you also have a southern stream system as well. You're looking at 500 millibar vorticity or spin. You can see this positively tilted trough lagging back behind across northern Mexico. You have another storm system dropping in across the northern Rockies. This is Thursday night into Friday. And the phasing of those two storm systems toward the end of the week into the weekend, that is going to be the play right here. And the Weather Prediction Center has upgraded the probability of an impactful storm system across the East Coast, upstate South Carolina, Carolinas, and Virginia as well. So this is your Clipper system, and we'll call it an Alberta Clipper just because it's dropping south from Western Canada around that ridge that is over the western U.S. It does have that southern stream system that is going to phase with and pick it up. There's the lead system now that's near El Paso by this time, and this is by Friday afternoon, Friday during the middle of the day. Look at that Vortmax dropping south, even to the west of the Four Corners. So that is some incredible north flow with that potent Alberta Clipper dropping due south across the western U.S. The lead system picks up across the southern plains, across the Texas Big Bend. And again, we're looking at mid-level spin with this system. There is that system moving across the southern U.S. Kicker system back behind it, interestingly, lags way back, cuts off over the far southwestern U.S., doesn't quite phase. We'll have to see if that still has some potential of ejecting in tandem. But there's your southern stream vorticity. A lot of cold air available to this system too with that positive PNA. And you have this Arctic air mass in place over the eastern U.S. Southern stream disturbance moving into the southeastern U.S. And then it rounds the bend, interacts with that temperature gradient over the western Gulf Stream. There's your spin. Look at that. And initially, it's a storm system with that little positive tilt down into northern Mexico. Leaves this storm system behind over northern Mexico, so you have to wonder if your next Clipper coming around that high pressure, that positive PNA across the northwest is going to pick up that one as well. This one just ejects off the east coast. And we are looking at the 6Z models, of course. When I was looking at the 18Z run yesterday of the operational GFS, similar evolution with this lead wave, slightly deeper eastern U.S. trough axis there, and it also leaves that closed upper low back behind across Mexico. Z starting to come out as well. That's Friday morning. So let's compare the models between 6Z and 12Z. There's your 6Z run. This is what we were just observing for your forecast on Friday morning. This is going to be your southern stream system that's over the El Paso area. Also have this Clipper diving due south that ends up cutting off across northern Mexico, closing off, I should say. So let's compare the 6Z run to the 12Z. 12Z looks a little bit slower and maybe a bit more sheared out for that lead system as it is just starting to come in. Excited to see this 12Z run. But as it's coming in during this live weather briefing, we'll just allow that model to come in, and then toward the end of this, we'll break down that forecast model solution. There's our southern stream storm system organizing across southern Texas. Takes a further south track than the latest one. Oftentimes, Mother Nature exists in pairs, whether it's a 1-2 punch with an ejecting storm system like we had during that October 10 and 12 during the fall season. We also had oftentimes two supercells that are located right next to each other with that kicker system, that kicker supercell, exciting a little mesoscale low-level jet ahead of it that can even encourage tornado genesis from the lead storm. And then this one, where you have another coastal storm diving south across the southeastern U.S. and then launching up the East Coast. Similar to the last one, but there's always going to be little differences. This is on Sunday morning, and the 6Z GFS has trended much further south with this ejecting coastal low, moving up the East Coast as well during the weekend. This is on Sunday night, but a lot different. And the models are going to waver all over the place like this, but look at, just so you could see what it looked like yesterday's 18Z run. It's a middle run in between the 12Z and the 0Z models. But this is Saturday night, and it dumped a swath in excess of a foot across northern Georgia, northern Alabama, across upstate South Carolina. But look at that coastal low a bit further south. You've got that high pressure in place, the blocking high upstream, 1030 millibar high over the Canadian Maritimes and New England. There's your blocking high pressure that's going to solidify this cold air mass. And east of the Appalachians, this is an incredibly cold air mass. Look at that, northern Georgia into upstate South Carolina. But this is just one model, and it was one of those intermediary model runs during 18Z. So I'm trying to see if the 12Z model will still show such an impressive coastal storm, but you have to be just aware that the ingredients in general are in place for that coastal storm, for that southern U.S. storm. But boy, last night's GFS didn't have it quite as much, did it? So the models are going to flip-flop all over the place, and we'll just have to see what that northern Mexico storm system does when it eventually moves across the southern U.S. Oh boy, look at that. Almost completely gone in the latest GFS. European model's a lot faster with this system. It's a Friday into Saturday type of a system with the European model. This is Friday night. So boy, still a lot of model discrepancies in this system. This is last night's European model. And there's your 1040 high, monster high over the northeastern U.S. You have this cutoff system that ejects from northern Mexico, but it's very subtle when it's across northern Mexico and Texas and then moving across the southern U.S. The models are having a lot of difficulty picking up on just how strong it's going to be when it ejects across the southern U.S. European model looks a little bit faster, bringing that snow in on Friday afternoon across the southeastern U.S., northern Georgia, upstate South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia, blocking high off to the north. And then that storm system ramps up across the western Gulf Stream. Look at that cyclogenesis off the Carolinas. But boy, the European model brings snow all the way to the coast on Friday evening, on Saturday evening. Well, Friday evening into Saturday. And then look at that coastal storm getting blocked by that high pressure over eastern Canada. Cyclogenesis happening, rapid cyclogenesis off the mid-Atlantic. That is Saturday, late morning. Saturday, middle of the day. Looks like an absolutely monster nor'easter, banana-shaped surface low as well. And it looks like, at least now, at least in last night's model on the European, that southern New England, New York City, the I-95 corridor certainly could be impacted by that storm system. Seems like the GFS is a lot more noisy than the European model so far, at least the run to run, with the consistency of depicting this system. The 18Z model yesterday in the GFS was showing a monster trough ejection across with a very powerful, potent southern U.S. storm system and a big swath of 12 to 18 inches. And then the 0Z GFS last night, the 6Z run, a little bit weaker of a system, trending a little bit closer to the European model. But the European model is just gradually starting to grasp onto this potential of a storm system. There it is in the southeastern U.S. And it's this far in advance, it's usually best to look at the ensemble forecasts of these just to see how substantial that spread is. But we'll start off with just a regular old snow map. And boy, look at that. Swath of snow from upstate South Carolina through central and eastern North Carolina, eastern Virginia, Delmarva, all the way up into New England, gets blasted as well. Slide that to the left of my head so that you can see that swath of snowfall goes from northeastern Georgia, upstate South Carolina, central and eastern North Carolina, the entire northeastern U.S., in fact. This is the departing storm system right now. This is last night's European model, so it's picking up on that swath of snow that's currently lifting to the northeast, a lake enhancement, Lake Erie, northeastern Ohio, into western New York. But this southern swath is the next storm system that lifts off to the northeast, southern U.S., and that's the one that is next weekend. European model is quite a bit faster, but look at last night's GFS model, trended a little bit closer to the European with that 18Z having a monster swath of snow. This swath right here is the departing storm system, the one that we just chased. So it does look like it's going to be a bit further south. There's going to be a lot of cold air available to this storm system as well next weekend, but we'll just have to see what these forecast models do. Look at the 6Z trending even weaker, almost non-existent with that storm system next weekend. But really what's happening here, even though we have planted the seed that this storm system is going to happen, I know the suits have already been planting it here locally as well, the seed that this is going to happen in the northeast. But the 6Z European all but gets rid of that southeastern storm system. And it is a very subtle little vortmax that has that positive tilt, hardly even identifiable across northern Mexico. So the models from yesterday to today do seem to be trending weaker with that storm system, but I am waiting for these 12Z model runs as well. Waiting for the GFS, the 12Z GFS to come out. And this is just going to be where run to run, we just continue to observe these models. And there it is again in the 12Z GFS. This is through Saturday night, shows a swath of southern U.S. snow again. But definitely trending toward a weaker storm system for next weekend, it looks like. But could ramp back up again, or at least trending weaker and a bit further south. Brings another ice storm, though. The 12Z GFS is coming in right now, that blocking high a little bit further east. This is definitely a complicated trough ejection because it's such a subtle storm system sitting across northern Mexico and Texas. But no matter what, I think no matter how weak it is across the southern U.S., I still think you're going to have rapid cyclogenesis off the Carolinas. And that low is going to go up the East Coast as a monster nor'easter, impacting the I-95 corridor. Definitely the threat is greatest across central North Carolina, but does look like upstate South Carolina is going to get in on the action. And that's going to lift all the way up through central Virginia, eastern Maryland, and eventually ride up that East Coast. The climate indicators are in place with that negative NAO, the positive PNA. Southern stream storm systems, just once they reach that temperature gradient on the western edge of the Gulf Stream, it's just when they light up, undergo cyclogenesis, and then rocket up that East Coast. So the 12Z GFS is coming in, and it certainly has that storm system once again. I think that there's going to be a lot of model discrepancy in the days through this week as we lead up to next weekend storm system, and we're just going to have to keep on watching it. I'll just sling these weather briefings one after another for you. so that we can break down next weekend's storm system. So you have this large scale trough in the eastern US, and it doesn't take much, just takes a little bit of a vort to travel across the northern Gulf of Mexico, and then once it emerges over the southeastern US, that's when rapid cyclogenesis takes place, lifts up the east coast, just a classic coastal storm system turning into a nor'easter, lifting off to the northeast. East of this cyclone over eastern Canada, there's a big ridge that is over Greenland, and that is that negative NAO that we talk about. You can see this ridge axis, even though it is getting broken down by this lobe of vorticity. It's really all about the positive P&A, in my opinion, where you have this ridge across the western U.S., the trough in the east. You get a little perturbation in the southern stream, and then it just lifts up this flow. You do have a ridge building upstream, though, but further upstream, that's that next trough of Greenland. There you go. So this trough, this storm system, warm advection upstream, definitely builds that ridge upstream over Greenland. And it does seem like the positive P&A precedes that a bit. Chicken before the egg. So you can see this ridge that builds it over the western U.S. That's a positive P&A. A negative P&A is what is conducive for severe weather during the spring tornado season. And that's what we had during the fall and during that active period during the winter, where you have a western U.S. trough, a ridge in the eastern U.S. That's a negative P&A. But oftentimes during the winter, you get this positive P&A with a ridge across the west and a trough in the east. It usually develops during the heart of winter. Lake effect snow season will then begin with that unsettled, cold, relatively moist, unsettled cold wind blowing over those warm waters in the northwest. Lobe after lobe of vorticity will pass through, enhancing that lake effect snow as the lift passes over the zone. So it looks to me like we're going to have a relatively weak perturbation moving across the northern Gulf, maybe a stripe of snow across northern Alabama, northern Georgia, upstate South Carolina, ice just to the south of that, especially into central South Carolina, the Carolina Piedmont once again. And then the system's going to undergo bomb cyclogenesis off the east coast, moving off to the northeast, bringing with it a monster band of snowfall that's going to impact portions of the northeast. The details, though, we still have to iron out. And we'll do that as we go through the week this week. I'll do this, and let's see the surface reflection. Something else. So these are the different ensemble members from the GFS. Let me slide this over a little bit so that we can watch it evolve with time. And you're definitely going to see a lot of uncertainty with this as we move forward with the forecast times. Not there yet. So this is your forecast Saturday morning. Boy, and there's not a lot of agreement, at least amongst the different members of the GFS. Many of them don't even show a coastal storm. Many of them, though, are hinting at that area of lower pressure across the southeast. So that's when your coastal storm will likely form by Saturday morning. Some type of cyclogenesis here off the South Carolina coast. And then lifts off the northeast. Definitely that further south track, though, compared to this last storm system, seems very likely. But at least the 0Z models last night are trending toward a weaker northern Gulf of Mexico storm. But you can kind of see that there's a separation in speed also. You have a slower solution here, the slower camp of models, and then you have the weaker system that still is able to undergo coastal cyclogenesis off of North Carolina. But your stronger camp, your slower, stronger camp with the southern stream perturbation also undergoes rapid cyclogenesis. Off the Carolinas. So it looks like the difference in the GFS is between speed, but many of them result in this East Coast storm system no matter what, the different camps. Those are each of the different ensemble members of the GFS ensemble. Definitely some strong agreement on this high that's going to be dominating the northeastern U.S., helping to inject that cold air along and maintain that cold air to the east of the Appalachians. And then your coastal low could form and ride right up the coast. We will just have to see. Too much model discrepancy, but there is the potential for a storm system next weekend. That's the exciting part. Oh boy, is it trending a bit weaker. There's the 12Z. Actually, a couple different storm systems now. There it is on Saturday afternoon. The next one coming in. Yeah, offshore. So it's very possible that this weaker, faster solution that we are seeing with the models isn't going to result in a very substantial storm system across the southern and the southeastern U.S. But I think we're going to see this windshield wiper effect. We're going to show a substantial system. It'll back off, show less substantial, ramp back up. All the hype will come along with it. But boy, right now, there's a lot of model discrepancy. It's a relatively weak system. Starts off as this positively tilted wave over northern Mexico, moves across the northern Gulf of Mexico, and eventually up the northeast U.S. But it's very possible that this storm system could be so far off the East Coast that even the I-95 corridor does not get in on the action. But I do think that there's going to be some type of a winter event across the southeastern U.S., northeastern Georgia, upstate South Carolina, upstate North Carolina as well, and into Virginia. But it's very possible that this thing could just shimmy right off shore. All depends on the speed and the timing of that blocking high just upstream as well. So, in my opinion, there are still a lot of differences in the models, a lot of model uncertainty, and definitely no reason to panic, no reason to get out there and get your milk and bread just yet across the southeastern U.S. It very easily could be a nothing burger and not happen at all. But the current storm system definitely was quite substantial, especially for the Appalachians and then up across eastern Ohio. Western Pennsylvania also got into the action all the way up through the Buffalo area. And now today, heavy snow across those mountains of northern New England, interior New England. The ski resorts are going to get in on the action, but definitely a pretty intense and very impactful winter storm here. I think this one was called Winter Storm Izzy. And now my eyes are on the next storm system coming up the pipe for next weekend, and I'm going to continue to sling these live weather briefings leading up to it. Thank you, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my weather reports. Never stop chasing.